Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com and ArrowheadAddict.com. And today I wanted to make a video talking about how the Kansas City Chiefs should approach the upcoming Orlando Brown situation this offseason. So, as most of you know, Orlando Brown is currently playing on the franchise tag for the Kansas City Chiefs this year, meaning that he is basically playing on a one-year prove-it deal, as the two sides could not come to a long-term contract agreement this offseason. And it was reported that Orlando Brown turned down a deal from the Chiefs that would have paid him around $25 million per year. And he wanted to be, he essentially wanted to reset the left tackle market. And, if we're all being honest, Orlando Brown had a solid first year with the Kansas City Chiefs, but in no way was he worth record-setting left tackle money. Trent Williams is the highest paid left tackle in NFL history as things stand, and Orlando Brown simply wasn't Trent Williams and isn't Trent Williams. Now, the reason I bring up this topic specifically at this time, since we're a little bit of ways away from the offseason, is I've seen Orlando Brown has been a really popular topic around Chiefs social media realms nowadays because, we're getting towards the end of the season here, and Orlando Brown hasn't had a terrific year for the Kansas City Chiefs, and that was a huge storyline going into this year. First of all, Orlando Brown bet on himself after turning down a lucrative deal from the Kansas City Chiefs, and he needed to prove that not only that he was worth that, but he was worth what he wanted from the Kansas City Chiefs. And secondly, the Chiefs needed Orlando Brown to be good. They invested a lot in this guy. They can't afford for him not to work out. And this year, Orlando Brown, so far, he'd be lucky if he hits the open market to get offered anywhere close to what the Chiefs offered him this past offseason. Now, according to PFF, Orlando Brown has actually had a pretty solid season. He has a 71.7 overall grade for this year. He's still a terrific run blocker, but he is tied 40th in sacks allowed with 3, and he also has 5 penalties this year. I also think the most discouraging part about what we've seen from Orlando Brown this year is there hasn't really been any progression. Now, I actually think he's been a little bit better than some Chiefs fans make him out to be. Some fans will talk about him like he's been a disaster. I don't think he's been a disaster. I don't think he's a turnstile. I don't think he's Cam Irving, okay? And I think he has better games against high-end competition than, say, Eric Fisher did when he was with the Chiefs. But I still see him struggle against speed rushers. I still see him struggle a little bit with competition that he really should be dominating. I mean, some of these plays, these defensive ends that are quicker and fast are just running right around him, and he's completely whiffing on them. And that was something that I expected to improve this year. And with his loss of weight this offseason, and I thought what was a improvement in his drop back, we just haven't seen any progression from Orlando Brown in that regard. That said, when I see a lot of these takes from Chiefs fans the Chiefs got to move on from Orlando Brown was a bad trade, Orlando Brown has to go, the Chiefs shouldn't offer him a big deal in free agency, which, in my honest opinion, no, they shouldn't offer him a massive deal, especially not what they offered him last time. I think it would be a mistake to offer him that. And also on Orlando Brown's part, I think he would be an idiot to turn down that deal a second time. And look, I'm just going to be honest with Chiefs fans. I think you guys are going to be really hard-pressed to find out that it would be extremely difficult for the Chiefs to find a better option at left tackle next season than Orlando Brown. I mean, that's just the reality from where they're going to pick in the draft, from the resources that they have, from the fact that, they already have so many other needs on this roster, and they've already sunk a bunch of assets into Orlando Brown as it is. The right move is keeping Orlando Brown next year on the tag again, most likely. Because you can't afford for Orlando Brown not to be the guy. He has to be the guy. You spent a first-round pick getting him, and if you were to trade Orlando Brown, hypothetically, you're not getting a huge return. You're not getting more than, or you're not really getting anything close to what you gave up to get him, especially if you're admitting that he's a failure, essentially, by trading him. And by the way, Chiefs fans talk about Orlando Brown. What makes you think you would be getting anything for him, really? I mean, he's not this hot commodity. The safest bet for the Chiefs is to have Orlando Brown on this team next year. Again, most likely with the franchise tag. Now, the benefit to putting Orlando Brown on the franchise tag again, not only does he give you at least a safe option at left tackle, because, look, again, I think he's been better than Chiefs fans give him credit for. Has he been terrific? No. Has he progressed? No. Has he been anywhere close to Trent Williams? No. But what's the alternative if you don't bring Orlando Brown back? You're not getting somebody that's better than Orlando Brown at left tackle from where you're picking in the draft, unless you're willing to trade really high up for a rookie tackle. And even then, there's no guarantee that your rookie left tackle is going to be better than Orlando Brown. The free agent class for left tackles this year isn't great. In fact, it's probably going to be headlined by Orlando Brown. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but in a lot of these articles that are coming out about potential free agents going to other teams this offseason, Orlando Brown is one of the most popular names among teams that are desperate for a left tackle. Now, if Brown hits the open market and another team pays him something that he's just simply not worth, then, look, you let him go, and that's that. And you'll probably get a compensatory pick back for him. But I think you got to franchise tag Orlando Brown before letting him hit the open market. There's really no risk to doing that. It guarantees he's on your team for at least one more year. And there's that outside hope that he continues to get better, because I think people are forgetting Orlando Brown is still a pretty young dude. He is only 26 years old, and it's not like his game is totally capped out already. And I just really don't think that the Kansas City Chiefs can afford to go into this next offseason with a massive hole at left tackle again. The Chiefs cannot continue to sink so many resources into addressing the same positions over and over again. They've already done it with defensive end. They are still in need of a defensive end, even though they seem to sign or draft one every single year. They still need help on defense. They could add another defensive back, probably another safety, even though they both drafted and signed one last offseason. They're probably going to need help at right tackle again. And if you get rid of Orlando Brown, well, then you're going to be targeting a left tackle. You're leaving yourself way too many needs, and you're showing that you can't successfully address these positions because you continually have to invest in them year after year. Orlando Brown has been far from elite this year. He's been far from elite in his time as a Kansas City Chief. But I have seen him play high-end football here. We've seen him play high-end football here. We've seen him go stretches where his side of the line is very quiet. At the same time, there's been games where it seems like he's letting up a pressure every other play. And I think that's still signs that this is a young player who is growing. And, I'm not out on Orlando Brown. I'm not. And I think it's ridiculous to get rid of him. It's ridiculous to move on from him. I think the Chiefs would be making a huge mistake if they just simply moved on from Orlando Brown this offseason. I'm not going to say he's been perfect because, look, he hasn't, and he definitely needs to show progress, but the Chiefs' best bet this offseason is tagging Orlando Brown and having him come back for another year. And that's not even a bad thing. Look, maybe you tag Orlando Brown one more year and just see how it goes, especially since, you need him. You need him on this roster. There's no shame or risk in doing that. And honestly, with the way that Orlando Brown has played this year, the Chiefs might just be able to get him on a really fair deal that he can agree to. The Chiefs are lucky that he said no to that $25 million per year contract last time around, but maybe you can come back this time and offer him $18 million a year. That would be really fair for both sides. And though Orlando Brown may never be a top 5 left tackle or anything, and though you would like to have one, especially for this offense and Patrick Mahomes, you're probably getting a quality left tackle on a really fair deal. And I don't think it's a stretch at all to say Orlando Brown is a quality left tackle. He just needs to put it all together and start playing more consistent, and he needs to learn how to handle speed rushers a little bit better. I'm not here to convince you guys that Orlando Brown is a great player, and I'm not guaranteeing he's ever going to be a great player. but I think he's a good player. I think he's better than Chiefs fans give him credit for. And even though it seems like a weak justification to keep a player just because you invested a lot in him, I think that it would be really bad resource management to let a player go that you traded a lot for to fill a position that is really, really hard to find quality guys at. You know, we saw Eric Fisher here for a really long time, and he was the left tackle for the first few years of Patrick Mahomes' career. Eric Fisher was a guy that constantly struggled, and the Chiefs did just fine with him. They won a Super Bowl with him. I don't think it's like the Chiefs can't win a Super Bowl because Orlando Brown is their left tackle. You know, if you were to make a list right now of problems on the Chiefs, I don't even think Orlando Brown is in the top 3. Like, Orlando Brown is fine. He's not spectacular, but he's fine. So, as far as how the Chiefs should approach the Orlando Brown situation this offseason, I think you go into it 100% needing to hang on to Orlando Brown, and you hope to maybe get a deal with him done that is very fair for both sides. Or, you know, if you're not really comfortable with doing that even, look, just put him on the franchise tag and ride it out for one more year. Because at least you'd be getting a third year out of Orlando Brown at that point. He might not be coming back ever again, but you at least have someone that can play left tackle for one more year and puts off having to find a replacement. And there's always a chance that he takes a step forward and then you're eventually able to come to a deal with him. I just don't think the Chiefs can afford to let Orlando Brown Jr. go this offseason. And if they do, another team is going to scoop him up. And the free agent market is weak. You're not going to be getting someone that's better than Orlando Brown off the free agent market. And I really doubt you're drafting a better player than Orlando Brown in the draft. I don't see it happening. So those are my thoughts on the Orlando Brown Jr. situation. I know there's been a lot of talk about him this season. There's been a lot of frustration, and I get it. But, you know, I think you got to keep him going into next year, guys. Like, unless you can convince me of a better plan or something like that. But I definitely want to hear from you guys. What do you think the Kansas City Chiefs should do with Orlando Brown? Are you satisfied with his performance this year? Do you think he can redeem himself down the stretch in your mind? Let me know. With all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. And make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com. I will see you all in the next one. Go Chiefs!